If you've followed XRP for the past few years, you've probably heard two statements that seem to completely contradict each other. The first is XRP isn't a security. The second is XRP meets the Clarity Act. At first glance, those two statements don't make sense together. If the court's already decided that XRP isn't a security, then why is the crypto community still talking about new legislation? Why are lawmakers debating the Clarity Act? And why do so many analysts believe it could still be one of the biggest catalysts for XRP and the entire crypto market? The answer is much more interesting than most people realize. Because this isn't really about XRP anymore. It's about what happens to the rest of the crypto industry. Let's start with what actually happened. When the SEC sued Ripple back in 2020, the case created years of uncertainty. For investors, exchanges, and even financial institutions, one question overshadowed everything else. Is XRP a security? After years of legal battles, the court made a decision that changed the conversation. The judge ruled that programmatic sales of XRP on public exchanges were not securities transactions. That was a major victory for Ripple and for the XRP community. It's one of the reasons many exchanges relisted XRP and confidence began to return. But here's where a lot of people stopped the story. Many investors assumed that meant XRP's regulatory problems were completely over. Not exactly. The ruling answered one very specific legal question. It did not create a comprehensive set of rules for the entire cryptocurrency industry. And that's the difference many people miss. Think of it this way. Imagine one company wins a lawsuit against a government agency. That victory helps that company, but it doesn't automatically create new laws that apply to every business in the country. That's essentially where crypto is today. The Ripple case provided important legal guidance. The Clarity Act is designed to create a broader regulatory framework. Those are two very different things. This is why you still hear lawmakers, crypto companies, and industry leaders talking about regulation. They're not trying to relitigate the Ripple case. They're trying to answer much bigger questions. Questions like, who regulates different types of digital assets? What rules should crypto companies follow? How can developers build without constantly wondering whether they'll face enforcement years later? And how can institutional investors enter the market with greater legal certainty? Those questions affect far more than just XRP. They affect nearly every project in the crypto industry. This is also why many people misunderstand the phrase regulatory clarity. Regulatory clarity doesn't automatically make an asset more valuable. Instead, it creates a more predictable environment where companies know the rules before they invest billions of dollars into infrastructure, products, and partnerships. That's what businesses usually want most. Not special treatment, just clear rules. So when someone says, XRP already won its case, why do we still need the Clarity Act? The better question is actually this. What problems does the Ripple ruling solve? And what problems are still left unanswered? Because once you understand that difference, the entire debate around the Clarity Act starts to make much more sense. So what exactly is the Clarity Act, and why do so many people believe it matters? To answer that, we first need to clear up a common misunderstanding. Many people assume the Clarity Act was written specifically for XRP. It wasn't. The bill is intended to create a clearer regulatory framework for the broader digital asset industry. That includes defining how different types of crypto assets may be regulated and which agencies are responsible for overseeing different parts of the market. In other words, it's much bigger than Ripple. Think about the current situation. A blockchain startup wants to launch a new project. An investment firm wants to offer crypto products. A bank wants to provide digital asset services. Before making those investments, they all want to know the same thing. What are the rules? If the rules aren't clear, many companies simply wait. Not because they don't like the technology, but because uncertainty creates legal and financial risk. That's why people often say regulatory clarity encourages innovation. When businesses know the rules, they're usually more willing to invest, hire employees, build products, and enter new markets. Now, let's bring XRP back into the conversation. If XRP already has an important court ruling behind it, could it still benefit from broader crypto legislation? The answer is possibly yes, but not for the reason many people think. It's not necessarily because XRP suddenly becomes legal overnight. It's because a clearer regulatory environment could make it easier for financial institutions, exchanges, and other companies to participate in the digital asset ecosystem with greater confidence. That doesn't guarantee higher prices. It doesn't guarantee immediate adoption, but it can reduce uncertainty. And uncertainty has always been one of the biggest obstacles facing the crypto industry. Now let's address another question that's appearing everywhere in the comments. What if the Clarity Act never passes? Does that mean XRP's future is over? Not necessarily. Remember, Ripple continues expanding its business globally. The company has announced partnerships in different regions, continues developing the XRP ledger ecosystem, and operates in countries with regulatory frameworks outside the United States. The XRP ledger itself is also an open blockchain. It doesn't stop functioning simply because one piece of US legislation is delayed. That's an important distinction. The Clarity Act could make certain aspects of the US market more predictable, but XRP's long-term future isn't based on a single bill alone. Its future will likely depend on several factors working together: real-world utility, institutional adoption, technology, liquidity, global regulation, and overall market demand. That's why I think both extreme opinions miss the bigger picture. One side says, without the Clarity Act, XRP is finished. The other says, the Clarity Act doesn't matter at all. Reality is probably somewhere in between. The bill could be an important positive development for the industry, but it isn't the only factor that will determine XRP's future. And that's exactly why investors should avoid building their entire investment thesis around one event. Whether it's a lawsuit, an ETF, a partnership, or a single piece of legislation. So, can XRP still succeed if the Clarity Act is delayed, or even if it never becomes law? The answer is yes, but with an important qualification. The Ripple lawsuit and the Clarity Act are two different things. The lawsuit helped answer an important legal question about XRP. The Clarity Act is about creating clearer rules for the broader crypto industry. That's why I don't think XRP's future depends on a single bill. If Ripple continues expanding globally, if institutions continue adopting blockchain technology, and if the XRP ledger continues to grow through real-world utility, those developments can still matter regardless of one piece of legislation. At the same time, if the Clarity Act eventually passes, it could remove uncertainty for many businesses and investors, making it easier for the entire US digital asset market to grow. So instead of asking, will the Clarity Act make XRP successful? A better question is, will clear regulations help accelerate adoption? Those are two very different questions. Now I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think XRP still needs the Clarity Act, or do you believe the Ripple lawsuit already provided enough legal certainty? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read as many comments as I can. If you enjoyed this fact-based breakdown and want more XRP videos that separate facts from speculation, make sure to like this video, subscribe to OG John XRP Insights, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.